Before we begin, take one quick second and subscribe to the channel. These stories aren't just made to entertain you. They're designed to stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Every episode is emotional, cinematic, and deeply human. So sit back, stay until the end, and let this story unfold slowly, because nothing about it is as simple as it first seems. There are certain kinds of silence that feel heavier than noise. Not the peaceful kind. Not the quiet of a rainy evening or an empty street at dawn. I'm talking about the silence that grows between people who once promised to care about each other. The kind that slowly fills every room until breathing inside it feels impossible. That was the kind of silence sitting in my apartment that night. I sat on the floor beside the couch with my knees pulled against my chest, staring at the glow of the city through the window. Cars moved below. People laughed somewhere in the distance. Life continued as if nothing had changed. But everything in my world had. Just 8 hours earlier, I still had a job. For almost 3 years, I worked at a small cafe downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I knew every regular customer by name. I knew who wanted extra foam, who hated sugar, who secretly ordered decaf while pretending they drank espresso. My mornings had structure, purpose, familiarity. Then, without warning, the owner gathered us together and announced the cafe was shutting down immediately. No notice. No backup plan. No final paycheck beyond what we were already owed. One moment I was tying my apron and smiling at customers. The next, I was carrying a cardboard box of my belongings through the parking lot, trying not to cry in front of strangers. By evening, reality hit harder. Rent was due in 6 days. My savings account barely looked alive. Groceries were already stretched thin. I remember opening my fridge and staring at half a carton of eggs and expired juice like they might magically solve something. That's the thing about fear. Real fear doesn't scream. It whispers. It sits quietly in your chest and tightens slowly, until every thought becomes heavier than the last. And in moments like that, you reach for the people you believe will catch you. So I called my boyfriend. We had been together for almost 2 years, though sometimes it didn't feel that way. He liked distance. Space. Independence. At first, I admired that about him. I told myself it meant we respected each other's individuality. But over time, that distance started to feel colder. Like I was standing outside a locked door I wasn't allowed to knock on too loudly. Still, he was the first person I thought of. Maybe because love makes you hopeful. Or maybe because desperation makes you forget things you already know. When he answered, his voice sounded distracted. "Hey," he said casually. I tried to steady myself before speaking, but my voice cracked anyway. "I lost my job today." There was a short pause. "Oh," he replied. "That sucks." The words landed flat. I looked down at my trembling hands. "I don't know how I'm going to pay rent this month." Another pause. Then he sighed softly, almost impatiently. "Well, you'll figure it out." Something about the way he said it hollowed me out instantly. Not cruel. Not angry. Just detached. Like my pain was inconvenient background noise during his evening. I swallowed hard. "I was wondering if maybe you could help me a little this month," I said carefully. "Just until I find something else." Silence. Then finally, "I don't think that's really my responsibility." I blinked slowly, certain I'd heard him wrong. "What?" "You're independent," he continued. "You always talk about handling things yourself." My chest tightened. Those words used to make me proud. Independent. Strong. Self-sufficient. But in that moment, they sounded less like admiration, and more like permission to abandon me. "I'm not asking you to rescue me," I whispered. "I know," he replied. "I just think people should solve their own problems." People. Not us. People. The conversation died after that. Neither of us knew how to save it. "Anyway," he muttered eventually, "I hope things work out." Then the call ended. I stared at my dark phone screen for a long time afterward. It's strange how heartbreak doesn't always arrive dramatically. Sometimes it enters quietly, disguised as disappointment. That hurt more. Because disappointment lingers. I don't know how long I sat there before the knock came at my door. Slow. Calm. Measured. Not aggressive. Not impatient. Just deliberate. I quickly wiped beneath my eyes and stood up. embarrassed even though nobody could see me yet. When I opened the door, my landlord stood in the hallway. He was older, maybe mid-40s, tall with calm eyes that seemed to notice everything without making you uncomfortable. He always carried himself with quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't need attention to feel powerful. "I'm sorry to bother you this late," he said politely. "I wanted to follow up about the rent notice." My stomach immediately dropped. Of course. The rent. For a second, I considered lying, saying the money was coming, saying everything was fine. But exhaustion won. "I lost my job today," I admitted quietly. He studied my face carefully. Not judgmentally, just carefully. Then his expression softened. "That's rough," he said. "I'm sorry." 3 simple words. But they carried more warmth than the entire conversation I'd just had with someone who claimed to love me. I looked away, ashamed by how emotional that realization felt. "I'll figure something out," I said quickly. "I just need a little more time." He nodded once. "I'm not here to pressure you." That surprised me. Most landlords weren't exactly known for compassion. He leaned slightly against the doorframe. "If you want," he said calmly, "come by my office tomorrow morning. Maybe we can talk through some options." Options. The word echoed in my head after he left. I closed the door slowly and stood there in silence. Because suddenly, one terrifying thought became impossible to ignore. The person I expected to care for me emotionally had made me feel completely alone. And the stranger I only knew through rent payments had shown me more humanity in 2 minutes than my boyfriend had all night. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed the phone call. "You'll figure it out." The words kept repeating in my head, colder each time. By morning, exhaustion had settled deep into my bones. I dragged myself into the shower, got dressed without caring what I looked like, and tied my hair back carelessly. Before leaving, I paused in front of the mirror. For a moment, I barely recognized myself. Not because I looked different, because I looked defeated. And that frightened me more than unemployment did. The landlord's office sat only a few blocks away from my building. I'd passed it hundreds of times before without thinking much about it. But walking toward it that morning felt strangely intimidating. Soft jazz music played quietly inside when I entered. He looked up from behind his desk and gave a small nod. "You came." I sat across from him nervously, twisting my fingers together. For a moment, I couldn't even speak. Then everything spilled out at once. "I don't have the rent," I admitted. "I've already started applying for jobs everywhere. I'm trying, I swear. I'm not just waiting for someone to save me." He listened without interrupting. That alone felt unusual. Most people listen just long enough to prepare their own response. But he actually listened. When I finished, he leaned back slightly in his chair. "I appreciate honesty," he said calmly. "Most people avoid conversations like this." Shame crawled into my chest anyway. "I know life doesn't give free passes," I murmured. For a second he said nothing. Then he folded his hands together thoughtfully. "What if," he said slowly, "we found another way to handle this?" I looked up. "What do you mean?" "There's a vacant unit downstairs that needs repainting and repairs before new tenants move in," he explained. "A lot of organizing, cleaning, small projects. Nothing dangerous." I blinked in surprise. "You'd let me work off part of the rent? If you're willing." Relief hit me so suddenly it almost hurt. Not because the problem was solved, but because someone had finally offered help without making me feel weak for needing it. And for the first time in 2 days, I felt like maybe I wasn't drowning anymore.